So, we're in Kuntreis Umayan, we're in Maimer Dalet, Parak Aleph, the page is page 73. So we're discussing the concept of how you have the lowliness of a person that invests himself in Avera. When a person invests himself in an Avera, the Klippa, Sotah, they're all trying to do what Hashem wants, even though they, by their nature, feel distinct from Hashem. But they acknowledge Hashem's, divinity and his power, etc., etc. And they say that even though they themselves, it's unfortunate that they for themselves feel like a separate entity from Hashem, but nevertheless they recognize the superiority of Hashem. And it's like that's why they say that he's called Al-Qad Al-Ikaya, he's called the God of gods, because even though they consider themselves to be an entity, they consider themselves to be gods. But Hashem is their acknowledged God of gods. When a person does an Aveira, a person is not considering this. He's taking away, in a sense, from the divinity of Hashem by completely ignoring and denying his existence. So when a person does an Aveira, he becomes worse than the Klippa and Sotah, because the Klippa and Sotah, their job is to make a person do Aveiras, and they're doing their job. They're working very hard at their jobs. They're trying to do what Hashem wants. When a person does an Aveira, he's not doing what Hashem wants, so he's lower than them. So we'll read the Kitzur, and then we're going to expound on this concept a little bit. So the Kitzur of the last base was the 365 mitzvahs, let's just say, and rabbinic prohibitions are distinct, they're separate from the unity of Hashem, like the Sitra Achara, which is called Avodah Zarah. And therefore, someone that sins, his thoughts, speech, and actions, and in general his soul, are enclosed in the Sitra Achara, and he's worse than them because he is denying the unity of Hashem more than the Klippa and Sitra Achara. So, page 73. After all of this is understood, the Masha Yitzhar Ramsise Shagam Yasa Maisara any different. We have to say that the fact that Yitzhar tries to convince him that even though he does something bad, he won't be separated from the unity of Hashem, but it's really only a spirit of folly which covers over the truth. Because when a person does an Aveira, he's more than the Klippa and Sotah, which they acknowledge Hashem's existence. A person is going against the will of Hashem. He's causing more of a blemish in the unity of Hashem. This is what the rabbi said. So what the rabbi said about the pasuk, that it says when a man's wife will sit there, when she'll lean, not she'll turn. So the rabbi's comment that a person doesn't do an Aveira until a spirit of folly enters them, as we said in the first moment.
What does that mean, sorry? If his wife turns?
It's about the parsha of Sotah. If a man's wife turns away and she's secluded with another man, and then you have the whole parsha of Sotah, what you do in the procedure. So about that pasuk, the rabbi's comment at the beginning of Masechah Sotah, it says that a person doesn't do an Aveira until Sisteh Meloshin Shtus. That is trying to say that the words are similar, that the root of the word Sisteh is that she'll be foolish, if a man's wife will be foolish. So it says a person doesn't do an Aveira until a spirit of folly enters him. Or her. Or them. The afilu isha hamana afes shedaita kala ahisa meshelis barak tavasa luli rak shos sheba machasa master mailim esa avim suteresh v'nafsha likis l'davka b'monas Hashem v'yichudu v'aftusei. This is like a little bit run on, but it's all concepts that we discussed. V'leili pardi chas v'shalom v'aftusei afilu neitlim es nafshem v'meno lavid v'dizar chas v'shalom. Because even a person who is adulterous, even a woman who's sleeping around, that her mind is obviously weak enough that when we say weak enough, we're saying it's not that it's a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of the ability to connect what's going on in the mind and what's going on in the emotions, that she knows that it's wrong, she knows it'll wreck her marriage, and she knows that ultimately it's not a good choice for her. Mm-hmm. Regardless of that, the ability that she has to connect between these things that she knows and the things that she does is very weakened. So that's why we use the lashon of das. But her das is weak, because das is what connects between the intellect and the emotions. So she's not able to rule over her spirit of she would be able to rule over her spirit of desire if not for the spirit of folly which entered her and which covered over the love that she has in her soul for Hashem and to do his mitzvahs, that she wants to cleave to Hashem and to his oneness and to his unity, and not to chas v'shalom be separated from Hashem. And she would even go on Mesiras Nefesh, even if they would take her soul. If they would say serve Avodah Zarah or be killed, she would rather be killed. And she knows this, and she could be mamash like a Tzadeikes in this sense. But what causes her to sin is not that she's not a Tzadeikes. What causes her to sin is not that she doesn't want to be connected to Hashem. No, she wants to be connected to Hashem. What causes her to sin is the rashus, the spirit of folly that enters her. That it's in the nature of souls of Jews. We explained in Minor Beis at the beginning that it's in the nature of souls of Jews that they cannot be separated from Hashem. And this is because of the love that's hidden within them. And therefore, as we discussed above, in that mimer, that even the lightest of the light Jews, the Jews that they don't consider themselves to be holy, they don't consider themselves to be religious per se or anything like that. It doesn't make a difference. Even the lightest of the light Jews will give their lives in order to be connected to Hashem. And even just to bow down, to put on a facade of being connected to an idol, they don't want to do it. And how much more so to conquer the inclination. And it isn't death just to not sleep around. But the woman, obviously the woman could do it if she's willing to give her life for it. Obviously she's able to not sleep around. And the difference that is between serving Avodah Zarah and sleeping around is the fact that you can frame a difference. Not the fact that you can point out differences. Obviously, different areas are different, and they have different shashim, the maila, etc., etc. But the fact that the Tzahara is able to frame them differently, saying Avodah Zarah is something that's off the table. You can't serve Avodah Zarah because the Tzahara knows he's not going to win right away with Avodah Zarah. Ultimately, the Tzahara could win with Avodah Zarah. We'll explain that in a second. But the Tzahara says sleeping around is not so bad. It's more of a bein adam l'chaveri kind of thing. It's more of a sin that's interpersonal than a sin with Hashem. It won't really separate you from Hashem. That's what the Tzahara tries to say. This difference, there really is no difference by a person if they would know and appreciate and be able to connect that by them doing this Avera, they're going against the will of Hashem, and in that sense they're denying the unity of Hashem. So just to explain, before we said, and also we said over here that even a Kal Shabakalim was going to be Meser his life to not serve Avodah Zarah. And you have thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of Jews. I honestly don't know how many Jews have converted to Christianity or whatever it is over the years. And the point of the statement isn't to say that no Jew would ever convert to Christianity or anything like that, or worship idols or anything like that, and it's not possible, and there's a physical limitation that if he tries to say the name of an Avodah Zarah, it's just going to get caught in his mouth. Obviously, it's not like that, as history has shown us. The point is a positive statement, to say that Jews, even light Jews, will give their lives for Hashem. Not to say that a Jew can't convert or anything like that. And the reason why is, we said this before, we alluded to it at least, that the Tzahara, the Chachamim said that the Tzahara tries to convince a person. First he says eat this, and then he says eat that, and next day he's saying serve Avodah Zarah. And we said that if the Tzahara is able to get you to become grub enough, he's able to just get you to do things without properly contemplating what they are. That's how Tzahara could get a person to even serve Avodah Zarah. It's a clear Ma'amar Chazal that the Tzahara could get a person to serve Avodah Zarah. Only the person doesn't just come to serving Avodah Zarah right away. If a person is grub, if a person is coarse and unrefined, and they don't contemplate what they're doing, they don't have any control over the Nefesh Bahamas, then ultimately they could very easily come to serving Avodah Zarah. And that's the Tzahara's game plan. And the Tzahara is able to get something like this, as long as he's able to make a contrast and say, no, you're not really getting separated from Hashem. The Tzahara is essentially able to convince a person to do whatever he wants. So, just we're continuing. I mean, they put paragraph breaks over here. I don't know why they put the paragraph breaks where they put them, but I thought this would be a good place to explain, but apparently we're just in the middle of a concept. But that is to say that it seems to the woman that's committing adultery, that she's not separate from the oneness of Hashem, and that she's still in her yadus. Yadus is an interesting term. It says that what defines a Yehudi, someone that's kafir and Avodah Zarah. So you could say it's like a good choice of words over here. Not that she's still in her as a Bas Yisrael or whatever it is. No, she's not in her yadus. I mean, she's convinced that she's still in her yadus, because she's convinced that she's still completely acknowledging the oneness of Hashem. Avodah Zarah is the complete lack of acknowledging the oneness of Hashem. She's convinced that she's still in her Yadus. She's convinced that she's still completely acknowledging the oneness of Hashem.
So there's no difference between serving Avodah Zarah and denying Hashem's presence?
The reason why serving Avodah Zarah is bad is because it implies that there's an existence besides for Hashem.
But is there a difference between that and denying that there actually is God at all? Like, as we're saying here, when you do an Avera, you...
Yeah, because Avodah Zarah is an active way of doing it, and denying it is a passive way of doing it.
Gotcha.
A person can't be killed for passively denying Hashem's existence. They can only be killed for... in general, we say that in order to be punished, you need to do a Maisa. There's very few things that you could get punished for, even just speaking. But even that needs speech. You need to verbalize something. But yeah. So, she's convinced that nothing is changing about her status of denying Avodah Zarah. Nothing is changing about her status in acknowledging the oneness of Hashem. But in truth, even for a light Avera, someone that violates the will of Hashem. He's more separate from the unity and oneness of Hashem more than the Klippa and Sitra Achra, which are called other gods, and they're literally Avodah Zarah. And more than all of the things which get Shefa in this world, all of the things which get their which get their sustenance from the Klippa and Sitra Achra in this world, which are impure animals and impure birds and creepy crawlies. And as the rabbi said, Yatrush Kodmach, that I think they translate it as the gnat. I don't know, the mosquito. Usually say mosquito. The mosquito comes before you. The Chachamim said that a mosquito comes before you. What does it mean the mosquito comes before you? So really what it means is it's saying, like, if I remember the Gemara in Sanhedrin correctly, it's saying that you should know that Hashem created the mosquito before you, and this should give you some level of humility. As in, the mosquitoes were created on the 5th day, because they're from the flying creatures, the water creatures, wherever you look at it, and humans were created on the 6th day. And so you should know that the mosquito was created before you.
But you can still kill them.
You could still kill them, but it's to give you humility that they preceded you in creation. So, Perush, but the Rebbe Rashab is giving another explanation. If I remember, it could be that I'm misremembering that was the default explanation. It could be that's just like an explanation that I saw in the Gemara. But regardless, this is the Perush that the Rebbe Rashab gives. The Af Yatosh Shemachnas Ve'eni Meitzi. Even a mosquito, maybe this is why it says a gnat, because I know mosquitoes don't do this. But even we'll say a gnat. Even a gnat, which it sucks in and it doesn't give anything out. I know the mosquitoes, they give out like some kind of like sealant for the puncture hole that they give. So maybe a gnat doesn't do that. I don't know exactly what a gnat is. I don't know if they're too common in Brooklyn.
They're not common in Australia from what I know.
Yes, but anyhow, so it's a bug and it sucks and it doesn't give anything out. So she klipa yeser tachteino rechikim v'chines hakdusha shahmashpas v'sachas torichok. Because and it's the lowest. It represents the lowest level of klipa. Because
Anat says it's just the different types of many flying insects.
Yeah, I figure
types of
I figure that
species.
I figure that when it bites, it doesn't give anything out. I know mosquitoes give something back out.
They're quite nice when they bite you. They give you a local anesthetic so that you don't feel it.
Saying that the mosquitoes give something. I'm assuming
very nice.
I'm assuming very kind. But you see, but this is what makes a gnat so lowly. What makes a gnat so lowly is that it gives out. I mean, it takes in. It doesn't give anything out, which is the ultimate distance. It's the ultimate klipa in a sense, because Kedusha, the whole Indian of Kedusha is the Indian of giving. It's the Indian of bringing Hashbal to the next level. And the gnat doesn't do any of that. The gnat is just taking in mamish. But even the gnat, but it takes precedence to a man who sins in his shalshalos and he causes a lack in the shalshalos and in the chayos coming down from Hashem's will. Because the sustenance which a man who sins receives, or the life force which a man who sins receives, is much more concealed and distant than the life force which a gnat receives. and even more so, all of the impure animals and even bad animals. That not only are they not kosher, but they also kill people, or they're dangerous, they're violent. Because none of them change their mission that Hashem gave them. They don't leave the stand that Hashem gave them to guard. They guard their spirit. Even though they don't see it, they're not necessarily conscious that they're constantly following out Hashem's will. As it says, and as it says in Bereshis, it says that your fear and your chitachem is another lashon of fear. Should be on the. There's. I don't think there's enough words in English to get through all of the words that you have for fear, because you have yira, pachad, chitas, ema, reses. You have so many words. I don't know if there's like enough words in English. So usually I say awe is zira. So I don't know exactly where you would put chitas. I'm sure we'll find some word at some point. They translated here as awe. But that's just because they needed to find two lashonos. I'm sure that they use all for something else in some other place. The gamer that your fear and your chitas will be on all of the animals of the land. If you have one of those new big chitases, you show up with that. You hold it like whatever. Maybe we'll get afraid. I don't know. But as the rabbis explained it, that an animal. No violent animal has any ability to harm a person until the person looks to them like an animal. It says, there's a lot of stories of Tzadeikes that there's one famous story. There was a rabbi who was collecting for tzedakah. He got to a certain port, I think it was the port of Jaffa maybe, I could be completely misremembering the story, and there was a lion that was loose from the Sultan's palace, that he had a collection of animals. The lion got loose and was terrorizing the streets. He walked over to the lion, he took it by its ear, he brought it back to the Sultan, and they were all very impressed, and they said, how are you not afraid? And so he said, I know that animal, the rabbi said, that an animal is not afraid of a person until he seems to like an animal. I didn't think I seemed like an animal, so I was able to go there, and I took the animal. But when a person does an Aveira, they're lowering themselves to a level lower than animals. So it says that Hashem put like an ice on everyone's like forehead, that the animal sees it, and the animal knows and recognizes and appreciates it in its nature and its core, that the person is on a higher level. You don't touch the person. You can't hurt the person. It's built into the nature of the animal. If I remember correctly, it says that when Cain killed Havel, he lost this, and Hashem said, your punishment is you're going to be in Golus, you're going to have to wander the land. He said, I'm going to die in like 5 seconds, the animals are just going to kill me. So Hashem restored the ice on his forehead so that he shouldn't be killed instantaneously.
Do you think that includes nuts as well?
What?
Do you think that includes insects as well?
Possibly. I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that it necessarily does, because I don't think that the mosquitoes are trying to be violent. I think that over here is saying that bad animals which are violent, that they don't attack. I don't think that mosquitoes are being violent, because I think mosquitoes are just trying to make ends meet. It's a hard world out there. Mosquitoes need to eat. But yeah, in general, I think tzaddikim, definitely there's a notion of hashpah that comes to the world through a tzaddik. So I think, in a sense, it would be poetic if tzaddikim got a lot of mosquito bites. But not chas v'shalom wishing mosquito bites on anyone. But anyhow, about tzaddikim she'ein tzelem elikim mistalek mehem al pneim kol chayus rois is kafrim kamayu, and the righteous that the form of Hashem doesn't leave their faces, because they don't do averes to take that away, to lower them. So all of the bad animals are bent over, as it were, before them, as in they can't do anything. They're humble before them. As it says in Zohar about Daniel in the lion's den. Famous story in Tanakh, the advisors of Nebuchadnezzar were jealous of Daniel, they made sort of a coup. They had him thrown into a lion's den, and the lions didn't harm him, and then they were thrown in, and then the lions ate them, because Daniel was a tzaddik, and Daniel wasn't harmed. And if this is all so, someone that sins and violates the will of Hashem, even with light avera, at the time that he's doing it, You can do tshuva after, and you can really go back to his level. But at the time that he's doing it, he's at the ultimate level of distance from the upper holiness, which is Hashem's unity and oneness. More than all of the animals, whether they're serving Hashem consciously or not, impure animals, shkatzim and ramasim, that they're getting chayas from the klipa and sitra achra. Literally, they're lower. And besides for all of the above, so through the separation and distance, the great separation and distance that comes through the action of the avera, Hashem should save us from it. So too his soul becomes blemished and becomes separated from godliness. Kaviyachol. U'kamesh kosav yigaras tshuva beferish Yaakov chavel nachalosei shul chavel l'makasher and neshama le'likos u'kamei chavel shulei sheyach l'kasher l'mayla v'kseil l'mata v'amshachas ha'neshama misharshim e'etata l'shem avaya misham nimshaches v'yiredis l'oilam hazeh l'sav shukuf adam chulu. And it says that there's like an example that there's it says Yaakov chavel nachalosei. Yaakov is the rope of his inheritance. So the Alter Rebbe explains in Yigaras HaKodesh that the same way that you have a rope, your rope is made out of many threads, and all together it's spun together into one rope. So too, the neshama has a connection to Hashem, and the connection to Hashem is like a rope, and every rope is a mitzvah. When a person does an avera, then it's like they're severing a strand of the rope. If a person does an avera that's chayav kares, it's like they're cutting the entire rope. So it says that it's amshacha from the sherish of the neshama, which is from the second hay of Hashem's name. And from there, and from there, this is like the lifeline of the neshama when it's enclosed in the body of the person. So kumay al derech mashal mekabel av shazar and tayag chaval amdakim, and it's just like if you have a thick rope which is made out of 613 thin strands. Kachal chaval amshacha anal kolim tayag mitzvahs. So too the rope. I didn't know this was going to be explained in the mashal over here, but so too the hamshacha that a person gets is included from the 613 mitzvahs. And when a person chas v'shalom violates one of them, nifsal chavel hadak v'mela nasa chalishas gam l'chalos hachavel. So the individual strand that mitzvah corresponds to gets snapped, and that causes a general weakness in the entire rope. And when a person is over on an avera that has a chiv of kares, the entire rope is snapped, the entire rope is cut, and his soul is cut off. Hashem should save us from this. So it turns out that when a person is convinced that through their avera they're not getting separated from Hashem, chas v'shalom, it's only a shtus that conceals over his knowledge. If he wouldn't be convinced by the Yitzhahara tries to hide from him the fact that there's a rope and that every avera that a person does is cutting the rope a little bit. And he tries to convince him that he's not losing one strand of connection to Hashem. But if you wouldn't listen to the Yitzhahara, and you can see the truth as it is, that through doing an avera he's separated from the oneness of Hashem, and he's distancing himself with the ultimate distance to the depths of the grave. It says, poetic lashon, lower than the tumah of the Sitra Achra and the Klipa and Avodah Zarah. Hashem Yishmeinu, Hashem should save us from this. Pogim nafshe Rachmana litzalon kanal, and he blemishes his soul. Hashem should save us, as we said. Hine mitzad ha'ava mesutaresh shabei ine yachol yisnifrim melikos la'yayir nikshol klal u'memaisei achetiv shom eifim. So if he would, if not for the Yitzhahara trying to tempt him with hiding all of this, I mean, he's trying to hide all of this so that he could tempt him. If not for that, Yitzhahara trying to cover over it, because of the love that a person has, he wouldn't be able to be separated from Hashem in any way. He wouldn't be able to do any avera. So it was the kitzur. We're already a little bit over time. We started late. My fault. Sinner is worse than a gnat. He's also lower than impure animals, and even bad animals that they're violent, that they do what Hashem wants of them. even if it's against their nature. So this is in addition to the fact that he's being separated from the unity of Hashem, from the oneness of Hashem, and he's causing a blemish in the threads of his soul by cutting a thread of the rope. Because of the Ruach Shtos, a person doesn't feel this.
Sure.